Welcome to the Hope Unyielding podcast. I'm your host, Hope Johnson, and today I'm sharing a conversation with three of my good friends on why you don't have to freak out about turning 30. In the year leading up to my 30th birthday, I had a bit of a freak out because I thought my life would look much different. I had dreamed that at 30, I would be on the mission field in Russia with the love of my life. Instead, I was as single as ever and living in a place I'd sworn I never would. Upstate New York. And as many of us survey our lives, they look nothing like we thought they were supposed to when we hit the big 3-0. We were supposed to have our dream job. We were supposed to be married. We were supposed to have kids. But I've had to ask, do any of these supposed tos actually align with what Jesus asks of me? The answer I've come to is no. My 30th birthday angst had much more to do with cultural influence and personal dreams than with the call of Christ. I've believed a lot of lies about turning 30, so I decided to invite three wise friends on the show to help tease apart some of the lies I've believed and to help me re-envision turning 30 through the eyes of Jesus. We had so much fun talking and laughing and sharing stories, and we actually ended up talking for so long that I decided to release this as a 2-part series. Today we'll be talking about the true meaning of success, and in part 2, which will come out on May 13th, we'll be talking about being single at age 30. Corinne, Greg, and Samantha encouraged me and challenged me with their wisdom and perspective, and I have no doubt that you'll feel the same.
This is going to be a really fun episode. Today I'm joined by three of my favorite people, Corinne DuBois, her brother Greg DuBois, Samantha Vocarte, who just all happen to be 30. Each of them has a lot of hard-fought wisdom and insight to share on this topic of why you don't have to freak out about turning 30, regardless of what your culture, even Christian culture, says. Corinne, Greg, and Samantha, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, great to be here.
Yeah, really cool to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get started. First, Corinne, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What does your life look like right now? And is it close to what you expected it would be like 10 years ago?
Well, I am currently living in Albany with two wonderful friends. We share a 3-bedroom apartment. I'm a professional piano tuner and technician, and I keep quite busy doing that. And I live close to where I grew up as a child, and after spending a few years in New York City. And that's an interesting question because I had to count. I didn't have to count because 10 is easy, but still I was like 20, not because in my mind I was thinking, 10 years old. What did I think I'd be doing at 30 at 10 years old? But then I thought, what was I thinking at 20? Because I know what I was thinking at 10. It had something to do with like a veterinarian and a bunch of horses. But at 20, things were different because I had gone through a couple pretty terrible years of illness. And if I'm not mistaken, I was in my first year of college, which should have been my second, I think. So I was just getting into my life in New York City at college with Greg and some wonderful friends down there. So I think I was a little bit, I wasn't dreaming an awful lot, let's just say. But I think maybe my underlying assumptions about my future would have been that by the time I turned 30, which when you're 20 feels like an eons, that I would probably have the horse I dreamed of. And hopefully it would come with pasture land and maybe a vehicle and maybe a home. But if not that, I was still kind of hanging on to dreams of a more transient life. I had even looked at chaplaincy programs and such, which would require travel. But I will say that at the age of 20, it was very difficult for me to imagine even making it to 30, because I think my greatest fear was that I would still be sick at 30 and I would be living with my parents. So anything that wasn't me sick at 30 felt pretty good, to be honest. So let's just say, so long answer.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Greg?
Oh man, when I was 20, oh gosh, I don't think I ever really thought about the future when I was in college. Like, I remember I had a girlfriend in sophomore year, and this was like the first time I'd ever dated anyone. Corinne knows this person very well. And like, I remember a conflict actually with her, which was about the future and the fact that I had no idea and wasn't even thinking about it. So yeah, I really wasn't looking ahead, but at that specific time, I do remember Corinne's 10-year-old dream. That was very present in our household.
Now it's my 40-year-old dream. I just moved everything out a little bit.
Yeah. I think though, if you fast forward a little bit, so I think by the time I was a junior in college and a senior in college, that's when I really started thinking about moving abroad. And where I'm at right now, as a 30-year-old, I'm living in Shanghai, in China. I've been in China since I graduated college, basically. Absent last year, getting stuck in the USA. That was interesting. And yeah, a lot of steps have led to this, but I think in the latter 2 years of college is when I really started thinking about moving abroad. And then my first experience in China was when I was a junior going into senior year, as a short-term trip. Yeah, so I think that hope of living abroad certainly was born in those times. But I think I just assumed that I would be married by the time I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was, I never even thought about it. I probably just assumed it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I turned 30 and I was like, oh, wait a minute. wait, hold on. And yeah. Yeah, so I'm over here, I'm teaching at one of the top language universities actually, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Trying to learn Chinese a little more every week.
Oh, you're fluent. Come on.
I am definitely not.
Definitely say that about you all the time.
Yes, and you're wrong.
If you can hail a taxi and get us out of a mess over there, then you're fluent. Or conversationally fluent.
I like your standard.
How about you,
fluency.
Samantha?
Well, my name is Samantha. I am living in upstate New York, which is where I've lived for most of my life, with the exception of a couple of years in Virginia for college. I've actually known Greg and Corinne for almost 30 years, actually. I don't even know how long we've known each other, but it's been almost 30 years. I have been very blessed to have a career in communications since I graduated college. I love what I do. And for fun, I am usually writing or working on music. Actually, I'm starting to do a couple more projects here locally and loving that. As far as where I thought I would be when I was 20, looking ahead at 30, I think that my life actually did line up with where I expected to be. I expected to be working in communications. I did expect to have art projects on the side. I expected to be saving for a house, which is currently what I'm doing. The thing that I didn't expect was to be living in America. And that has been a bit of a shock for me because I really wanted to be spending a couple of years overseas. I'm fluent in Italian. I wanted to be working in missions in Italy. God redirected that a couple of years ago. And he was like, no, it's not Italy. It's actually Southeast Asia. And then I was in Japan for what felt like a skinny minute, got sent back home, and then COVID hit like 18 months later. So this is actually the longest I've gone without traveling outside of the US. And when I turned 30 last year in the middle of the pandemic, I remember just thinking, well, my passport has expired. The world is shut down. I don't know what to do. And that was my first real, I would say, crisis moment, like internal crisis about turning 30.
Well, this is really helpful for me to hear because for some reason, I thought that everyone had a very clear vision for what their life would look like at 30. And I think talking with you all. I mean, I feel like it's interesting what you said about your girlfriend then, Greg. It's so funny because I probably would have been like that too. Like, what are you thinking about the future? So this is going to strike you as kind of weird. Maybe you won't want to be friends with me after this, but when I was in 7th grade or so, I wrote obituaries for me and all of my friends.
Whoa.
And, yeah.
Wow.
That's what I was like.
That's more than a 30-year life plan. That's like a life plan.
That is how intent I was on achieving my dreams and on seeing my friends achieve their dreams. So mine was a full life plan right up until 60, except I wrote it in the past tense, which is so weird. But I was going to go to school, get married at 22, go be a missionary with my husband. Then we were going to come back, and then he was going to become the pastor of the church, and we were going to have this many kids. And this was my whole life in an obituary. And I did the same thing for my friends. So this is just...
That's amazing. That's amazing. Do you still have this somewhere?
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope you have.
I may. I was in a writers club 7th grade, and I may actually have it. I'm going to go try to find it. And if so, I'll send you guys screenshots.
Yay.
But this is just helpful for me because it's making me realize how much of these expectations that I had for 30, they're not necessarily expectations that I should have had, but they're definitely informed by, I believe, not only my internal desires, but my culture, the church culture, just different narratives I was receiving. So I just wanted to talk with you guys about 2 of these narratives that have really messed with my head, especially where singleness is concerned, but also where professional success is concerned. I think it was about 23 or 24 that I started feeling like I was running out of time to publish a book. I had a goal of getting a book published. I thought that's how early I need to start this career. And I had a professor say to me, Hope, you don't have to do everything before you're 25. And so I pushed the bar to 30. Okay, well, I need to get this done by 30 if I don't have to do everything by 25. But we have these 30 under 30 lists, and we see them and we think that it's so important to achieve success before 30. Or maybe when I'm saying we, maybe it's not you. Again, maybe these have just been things I've internalized, but I'm curious as to what you all think about that. Have you experienced this pressure to either be really successful in your discipline or have a more stable career, whatever that means, by the time you're 30? And if so, is it internal pressure, external pressure, or both? And I'll start it with Greg.
I mean, I think this is a really good question, but I think a lot of it we have to kind of define success very clearly. Otherwise, we're going to end up talking about different things. So I would say that I do often have a sort of a nagging feeling sometimes of like, do I feel successful? As I know that there seems to be a desire to be successful, quote unquote. People use that word a lot. People often evaluate their lives, and people often define success, I think, in terms of their work. Like that's often where that word is used. I don't see that word used too often in terms of personal life or like family life. Like, I don't know. Do people talk about being a successful parent or a successful spouse? I don't know.
I think moms do, but
yeah, moms.
But that's
do.
Another tangent we could go on. Yeah.
I know that I would say I want to be good at what I do. I want to be like producing something of value. So for me personally, that would be a standard. But I was realizing something very interesting as I read this is related to the article that you wrote a while back. I read that article and I realized that I didn't connect that much with any clear external pressure to succeed. And I think one of the reasons is that I left the USA when I was 22. And like, okay, when you're a 22-year-old in US culture and you decide to move to another country, everybody's cheering you on. Like, they think you're the coolest person ever. They're like, oh, sweet, you get to live abroad. Like, you're young, you're cool, like, you're crazy, just go have fun. And it was totally within the expectations. I think the success expectations kick in like when you hit 25, 26. But I was already abroad. And so every time I would come home, which was, you know, typically every summer I would come home, sometimes for Christmas, I would share about what I was doing in China, and nobody ever put those expectations on me though. And I am kind of curious as to why. Like, all of the responses I get would be exactly the same as the responses that people gave me when they heard that I was leaving. Wow, so cool. Like, you speak Chinese. You're amazing. You live abroad. How do you do that? I want to do that. And like, no one ever made me feel that I needed to do anything other than what I was already doing in terms of American communities. So when you mentioned external pressure and internal pressure, I haven't sensed any external pressure from any of my American communities, probably because I'm not really in those communities. I come and go, and they feel no need to put that pressure on me because I'm just leaving next month. And then in China, I'm also an outsider. This is something that takes a little while to get used to, living in China, but outsiders will always be outsiders, no matter how long they live there, no matter how good you are at the language. And because of that, any social pressures that exist for local people are not really going to be applied to you, or even if they are, it's not that strong. And then again, even if they are, like, who cares? It doesn't bother me, because I'm the outsider. So it's a very odd thing, I realized, to leave your home culture, leave your home community, move to another place where you will never belong. There is not a lot of external pressure, at least in this regard. So that's a long answer, but it's very interesting for at least my situation. I don't know. What do the rest of you guys think?
So for me, it's, my parents did a really good job in defining success as like a three-pronged thing. And I don't think they ever intentionally did this. This is how it stuck. The first measure of success is, are you walking with the Lord? Like, are you pursuing a relationship with Jesus? Are you okay with God? And so that's always been like the tantamount measure of success. And I always have been close to the Lord since I was about 4 years old. So I always felt successful in that realm. Like, okay, at least we're working on it and we're good. It's a relationship. The second is, are you in a career or a field where you are happy and you are also financially stable? It wasn't ever like, you need to make this much money, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. It was, are you stable and are you, able to grow? And the third way was, are you like growing in your community? Do you have good friendships? Do you make time for travel? Do you do fun things? So that was my parameter. That was my scope for success. And so I really blocked external pressures because, similar to Greg, but I haven't been able to actually act it out in full blow. I don't really identify with the American standard of success. I remember driving through a development that my father was working on because he was in development. And it was a suburb. And I remember I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I look at him and said, Daddy, I don't ever want to live in a place like this. This is hell. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, well then you're going to have to travel. Because I don't identify with what I would consider a safe, normal American life. I always wanted something that was a little bit different. So I just kind of blocked external pressures, but internally, oh my gosh. Internally, I'm like, I haven't written actually I did write a book, but it didn't go very far. I'm like, I haven't done this and I haven't done that. What? Yeah. You didn't know about that? Oh. Yeah, every writer's got a book they don't talk about, and that's
oh yeah, I have one of those too.
Yeah, we all
my word.
Bro, it was like 80,000 pages.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, words.
We need more screenshots. Hope can give us the obituary. You can give us your book.
Yeah. But I think I was always driving myself forward internally. Like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And none of that was coming from outside. But it can be pretty hellacious inside too.
How about you, Corinne?
Yeah, this has my wheels a turning. Another word that came to my mind when I read the question success was ambition. And I think we are all different, and there are different parts of our personalities that will kind of jive with ambition. And I somehow tie ambition to success. And maybe that's because I live here, and maybe that's because that's just, you just think of all of the media that we take in and all of the stories that we read and listen to, or any of it. And it's typically tied to ambition. It's tied to extrovertedness. It's tied to money. And that's why it's so important to define it, because success in that sense is one thing, and success in a different sense, like what both of you were speaking about, is another thing. But can we talk about the battles that are waged inside your mind and your heart when you are at this age, and the stories written about anyone our age, it's so interesting. You're either, I think finances. So I think you go to school in New York, and you finally make the appointment at career services, and then you get a 9 to 5, and you make enough money to pay off your debts and buy your horse, whatever, like, like in my mind,
buy that horse,
right? Like, there's this pathway, but the thing is, isn't it funny how my pathway to success is my pathway to getting what I want? And that is not my heart's measurement of success. And that's one thing I'm learning at 30, is what I want is not always in line with what God wants for me. And I should probably be happy about that, because my stick figure portraits of what I want in my life aren't as good. And it's really actually hard to let that sink in. Like, in fact, that's part of the battle in me, because the internal pressure says, what are you doing? You told your father like a long time ago that you did not want to touch pianos for a living. And then look what happened. Here you are filling your days with pianos and piano work.
You told Dad that? When did you tell Dad that?
You two learned how to tune. And I said, Dad, that's going to hurt my arm. I don't want to learn how to do that.
And now it is hurting your arm.
And now it is hurting my arm. And
that's why I don't do it.
But the thing is, it's a growing business. I own the business. Well, whatever that means, you know what I mean. But like, when I step back and think about success, as it's measured now, am I an influencer? Am I wealthy? Am I don't know, any of these things. But it's just a whole lot of noise in your head. But I will say, to actually answer the question, external pressure growing up, we had none. Our parents wanted us. I shouldn't say that. I never felt pressured. In fact, I felt like it probably would have been helpful for my crazy self to be told to go to career services. But I did not, because I'm kind of lazy.
You never felt pressured to get a job?
Well, to go to career services and like see what do you like? What are you good at? I kind of sidled along like a classic, I don't know, I'm going to call it the Enneagram again, a classic Enneagram 7, who's like, what's the job that makes me work the least, gets me the most amount of money, and allows me to have like the least committed lifestyle possible? And besides bagpiping, which I also have found it. I have found it. So
you have.
I have literally found it, but but the thing is, it's not what I planned, and it's so interesting to me how it has led me to learning so much about. I always bring up like Mary and Martha, like how did Christ define, the good life, or the good and the beautiful and such. Good. And I want to believe that Martha is the one that we all should be. She's efficient. She's hardcore. She's a planner. And there are Marthas, and they're beautiful, and they're good at hospitality, and I'm terrible at hospitality. So part of me needs a little bit more Martha. But Mary's the one that Jesus was like, she sat at my feet and she listened to me and she loved me. And so my idea of what I wanted, which was fast track to money and horses and whatever. Why do horses? This is going to be awkward. I realize I'm going to talk about horses every 5 minutes.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to put my Venmo in the notes and send me some money for Corinne's horse if you want to support this podcast.
This is a GoFundMe to help her horse.
Corinne, you know what's so funny? I just had like the 3rd prophetic word over my life about horses, and so I was like, you know what? I just like booked a horseback riding lessons.
You
like,
did not.
I did. I'm like, I need to understand this horse thing.
Listen, one of the 3 prophetic words spoken over me in my life, 2 actually, maybe 2. The first one was something about singing, and the second one was get back in the saddle. Am I right? Am I right? And then I was like, oh wait, no, I know what you mean. You mean like stop like being lazy and stop.
No.
Ignoring
You're turning it into a metaphor. It's not a metaphor.
And I was hoping it wasn't a metaphor.
It's literal.
But that was a couple years ago, and I still don't have a horse, so you know. But anyway, all that to say, the internal pressure is there, and it comes in waves. And the external pressure, growing up, it wasn't there. And then I don't even know. People ask me like why I do what I do, or they say, "Isn't that an odd career?" or "That's an odd direction to take." And I'm like, "Yeah, but guess who's not working 9 to 5?" You know? Yeah, people say strange and odd, and what led you to that? And I had to stop myself sometimes from like being self-deprecating about it and saying like, "Well, it's the only thing that was available at the time, and I quit teaching." So I have to stop myself and say, no, I'm proud to be in this business, and it's a great legacy. Not to mention the fact that I meet so many cool people, and I see them twice a year, and I build relationships with them, and I get to drive everywhere and see all these cool places and meet all these cool animals, and I don't know, like it's a window into so many people's lives that I would never have. So the more I'm in this work, the more I'm realizing what an incredible blessing it is. But the onslaught of, you know, was that like what you wanted to do? Or, you know, and then to myself, I say to myself, wouldn't you rather be in Colorado on a ranch? And I'm like, not really. I'm here. My parents are here. Maybe someday I'll be there. But for right now, this is where I am. And I'm working through it. Because it isn't, I mean, I had no plan. So it's not exactly what I didn't plan, but that's my problem. I had no plan. If I went to career services, who even knows where I'd be? Maybe I'd have 5 horses. I don't know.
The time you mentioned career services, I keep thinking about when I went to career services and talked with the King's College Career Service, and they helped me write a resume. That's all they did.
Oh, so maybe I was fine then.
Yeah, you were fine.
Career services at Gordon weren't very helpful. They just helped me write. They looked at my resume, and the guy was like, move this. You're fine.
What? I've been holding this over my head for 10 years.
No need. They're not that helpful.
But
I don't know. I guess it's just the idea that I didn't Google anything else. I didn't say like good jobs for people who want money and less work.
I can add a couple of thoughts based on what Corinne said.
Yes.
And what Sammy said. So one thing I realized is you're totally right. This is something I tell my Chinese students a lot. Our parents gave us so little. Like I remember our dad when I was trying to figure out what to major in college, the only thing he would say to me was, "Just figure out what you like and do that." That's all. And it was terrifying. I didn't know what I liked. Like I ended up choosing like fish. Like I wanted to study fish.
What?
Okay, forestry.
So, Hope, I
did not know.
I might have met you in Maine had I done this. I looked at University at Orono and at Unity College marine biology programs. Yeah. Also University of Miami, because I secretly wanted to go to Florida and have fun. No, I didn't know what I wanted. Like I was 17. Like some people do. Hope, you clearly did. I did not. And
I'm glad I didn't get what I wanted.
So the second thing that came to my mind was, I do think that there is something that occurs, especially in American culture, that all of us are victims to, and that is like the tyranny of our own dreams. Is that we are told that we are supposed to have one, and then that we're supposed to make that the center of our lives.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to work towards it. And like, if we don't make it, it's not the end of the world, but it seems that is supposed to be where the meaning of our life comes from. Mm-hmm. And that felt like a tyranny to me, especially at age 17, trying to be like, I don't know what I want. Like, I don't have a clue. And you're telling me I'm supposed to know. And I'm supposed to make a major life decision based on this knowledge that comes from somewhere inside of me. And so eventually I ditched that. Actually, that was when I became a believer, actually. It was shortly after I decided to study fish. And
is that a metaphor? Did you get a fish on your car?
No, I literally, one of my first big experiences of like sort of actualizing what I believed was sitting down in our good friend Matt Hopkins' youth group and realizing, oh my goodness, I never asked God what he thought about my major because I wasn't a believer when I made that choice. And it was like April of senior year. None of the colleges, most of the colleges were done. They weren't like taking new applicants. And I like threw everything away. I was like, I can't trust any of these decisions that I've made. I have to go back to the beginning and try to figure out what to do. And that's how I ended up in New York City, actually. Because King's College is one of the only schools that was still accepting applications at the time. And because they gave me a really good financial aid package.
There you go.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Because again, I think even at that time, I don't know what I want to do. So.
Well,
yeah.
I like the word you use, tyranny, because we don't see it like that from the inside. And I do think looking from the outside, it is a kind of tyranny. I'm just curious as to what Samantha and Corinne, what you think about that idea of the tyranny of this idea of the need to fulfill our dreams. And then where does the gospel meet that? That's what I'm really curious about, because I've had a lot of students from China as well. And Greg, as you can probably attest, that's not as high on their priority list. I've had so many Chinese students who I'll say, well, why did you choose this major? What interests you about engineering? And they'll say, well, my dad's an engineer and he really wants me to be an engineer. Tell me if I'm wrong, Greg, but that seems to be much more of the paradigm outside in East Asia.
It's changing.
Okay.
But that's still definitely more the case. There's a lot of cross-cultural psychology research on this. One particular dimension called locus of control, and it measures where people sort of identify factors on which they make decisions. And if you have a more inner locus of control, it means you're making decisions more based on what you think and what you want. An external locus of control would be external factors, situations, what other people think especially. And I think, definitely in China still, the norm is more to just like do what your parents want you to do. But then what do your parents want you to do? They want you to have a stable career. And like, they don't pretend that it's a dream. They're just like, you should have a stable career, major in finance. Like take the civil servant test, get the job, like get the benefits, chill. But it's changing a bit, especially in major cities like Shanghai.
Okay.
But anyways, I'll stop talking.
No, that's interesting. That's helpful.
You had also, I kind of wanted to hear what Sammy and Corinne thought about the idea of a tyranny of a dream.
Tyranny of a dream. Well, my parents were really great about the fact that they encouraged our dreams, but at the same time they said, what are you naturally good at? Because if I remember when I did graduate, my dad said, you could do whatever you want now. And I panicked. Like I burst into tears and I'm like, no, my entire life, people have told me what the next thing to do was, like go through high school, these are your classes in college. Like, it had been lined up. And all of a sudden I was carrying the weight of my own destiny, and I just buckled, and I cried a lot of tears. So what I knew was that I wanted to live overseas. I wanted to work in Italy. This is where it gets interesting when we talk about our own desires versus the gospel. I thought I had checked with God about this. So for like 25 years of my life, I prepared for that mission field. I had spent time in Italy. I had a church I wanted to work with. I was so prepared. And like, I got to the point, how old was I? I had just turned 27, and I was ready to move, and I had gone to the Lord. I think it was the first time I ever did this. And I said, this is the plan. What do you think? And that's when all of a sudden I start having like crazy repetitive dreams about Asia, which was the first time that ever happened to me. I had zero interest and zero background knowledge. And then from there, God's like, let me show you how cool it's about to get. And he just like for 6 months laid everything out. It was amazing. But the thing that I struggled with in those moments was laying down what I considered my own dream, what I thought was best for me. I'm already good at this. I'm doing what I'm good at. I'm good at Italian. I'm good at like writing and communications. I can work anywhere. And I just buckled under that. And I argued with God for about 6 months. The 6 months he was trying to show me how cool it was going to be. I was arguing with him about, but what about the dream that we worked on together that I decided we were going to do? So when I let that go, in light of the gospel and who Jesus is, and understanding that what he wants, like he gets what he wants no matter what. If it's not through you, it'll be through somebody else. Like he finishes what he starts. He just wants to partner with the person he chooses. So I think that I was learning about intimacy with the Lord throughout that process, laying down my own dreams, laying down the tyranny of what I had built up around myself that I was convinced was so great. And by laying that down is when it started to actually get real in my relationship with the Lord.
I love that so much.
It was lit.
Oh man, whenever you tell that story, I just love it.
Yeah, I cried a lot. I cry a lot. Just listeners, if you haven't met me, I cry a lot. Jesus makes me cry all the time.
How about you, Corinne? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think tyranny, I think that's such an excellent word, because as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking of all the other things that tend to have tyranny over me too. And it's kind of this past couple weeks, we had Holy Week, and I had many, many opportunities to be in church. And I came upon kind of mentally this realization that a lot of my attitudes tend to reveal that I think I'm the center and everything revolves around me. And I think that must be the case for a lot of us, but I think the Holy Spirit is good at showing us that, whether it's waking up and throwing yourself a pity party because of A, B, or C, or maybe even not a pity party because of what you have done, but maybe because it's of things you haven't done that you wanted to do, and I think, and I don't know which, I think I spent the hours between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in this, we call it the Garden of Repose, which is a part of a liturgical kind of celebration of the day before Good Friday. And I was there from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. And I was like, this is crazy. What am I doing? I'm driving up the Northway at 2 a.m. And then I get in there and I'm like, well, you put your phone down, because I was like, oh, well, this is a great chance. No, Corinne, put your phone down. So I put my phone down and I was praying. And there wasn't some huge moment, but I think what it was revealed to me is that a lot of my pity parties and moments of just kind of negative attitudes about my life right now come just so directly from me being the center. And in my mind, as I'm sitting there praying, I was kind of saying, like, can you show me what it's like when I'm orbiting around you? And it was such kind of a poignant moment, because we're right there and almost in Good Friday and such, and he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I'm sitting and trying to stay awake like the disciples and almost failing. And it struck me that when you're orbiting and you're not at the center, it begins to matter less. It doesn't not matter at all because of who we are and the gifts we're given and the opportunities we have in life and just living on earth. but it begins to matter. So the idea of tyranny, I realized that there was an awful lot of things that were, I guess the word would be an idol. And you don't notice when you put them on the throne, but you end up kind of sidling, you get to scooch them a little closer every day, and you're like, scoochie, scoochie, scoochie. And then they get there and you're like, oh, I'm idolizing this. I'm idolizing this. I'm idolizing this. And the way you know it's an idol is because when you think of not having it, it actually it makes your heart drop out of you. And you're like, the only thing that should make my heart drop out of me is experiencing anything even close to what Christ experienced when God said, you are going to be separated from me to save the world. That's the only thing. So I was like, and then I remembered from this book I read over and over when I was little, is this, the prayer that never fails is thy will be done. Ooh. And if we can say thy will be done in most and every, we're not going to get it right every time. He knows that. But what this gets me to the idea of how the gospel meets success and how it meets ambition and how it meets kind of our measurement of where we are in life. Are we at the center, or are we orbiting around him and continually saying to him, thy will be done, thy will be done, thy will be done. And the more you find yourself kind of joining him in that, whether it's even just like driving. I do a lot of driving, but when I'm driving these days specifically, and I have to say this is a shift from the past few months. This is a shift. And I think it's come directly from faithful friends praying and such, but it's a shift, and I'm seeing it working out in my kind of exactly what we're talking about, which is my understanding of where I am, am I scooching things like my horse? Yes, of course I am. I don't need these things, but our human minds say we do, though. They do. But then when we say, but look, this is the gospel, this is what we need, there's a cloud, there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people, followers of Christ, who had every possible thing happen to them. And it doesn't matter if it was just normal people living life who lost a child, or normal people who had a plan and it didn't happen, or normal people who, I'll never forget the story of this old guy named Arthur who lived in his little house, and he lost his wife, and he made it his job to take care of these teens. He was I think he was like an auto parts mechanic or something, and he made it his job. He didn't live this crazy 7 million followers on YouTube life. He said, I'm going to take these 3 kids out for fish and chips. And the stories that have come from that have trickled down, this stuff like this, just people living their lives. There's millions of them all the way back to the beginning of time who have had different lives. So it's so helpful to think that, because there's a pattern that we think we need to follow, or there's a pattern that we think we should observe that we're following. And it's very encouraging to know that there are Arthurs out there, where things just don't happen the way you think they are. And it doesn't matter, because thy will be done.
And that's all we have time for today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to make sure you don't miss part 2, subscribe to Hope Unyielding on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to get a reminder when part 2 comes out on May 13th. We'll be talking about singleness at age 30 because, well, we're all single, and we've each had unique struggles, joys, and unmet expectations in our singleness. We'll talk about unfulfilled desires, the joys of being single, singleness in the American church, and most importantly, what it means to follow Jesus in our singleness. It's one of the favorite conversations I've had in a long time, and I think you'll feel the same. Thanks so much for tuning in to Hope Unyielding, and I hope to see you next time.